A great feeling of peace has come over me, a sense of Zen serenity, joy and contentment. Because on Wednesday, the 21st of May 2025, the Supreme Court ruled that wild camping on Dartmoor was to remain a legal right, despite a challenge to the contrary by an extremely wealthy landowner. And this victory is particularly wonderful because it feels like it's about much more than a 4-mile square patch of moor. The world in 2025 seems to be a place where being rich, selfish, loud and boorish is a surefire way of getting your own way. I'm sure you can think of a few examples. This represents an increasingly rare victory for the underdog. The Ewoks have brought the Empire to its knees. In this podcast, or whatever it is, I'm going to celebrate by going wild camping on said wealthy landowner's patch. And I'd like to talk about how we got here, why we got here, and why the Supreme Court made absolutely the right decision. Welcome back to the Dartmoor Podcast. Now, I've been covering this story as it's developed over the last couple of years in 3 other podcasts, so don't want to repeat myself too much. But I also know that if I ask you to go back and watch those videos first, you won't do it. You'll just assume that I'm attempting to harvest your views for those vast sums of YouTube cash. So I'll attempt a short and simplified rundown of events now instead. In 1949, the UK government passed the National Parks and Access to the Countryside Act, essentially a list of rules designed to protect some poorly managed areas of upland and wilderness and to encourage people of all walks of life to get out there in the nature and enjoy themselves responsibly. Dartmoor was to be designated as one such responsibly enjoyed wilderness, becoming a national park in 1951. Then, in 1985, a series of bylaws were written up to further clarify the rules about how people could enjoy Dartmoor. This included stuff like no fires, no metal detecting, no raves, no golf, no guns, no feeding the naughty ponies, etc.
I've not got any food. Yeah, excuse me, it's my camera. Excuse me, hey, no. But no, that's my bag, thank you. Look all innocent now, eh? Just try. Mum, they were trying to eat my bag, Mum. You're acting all innocent now, like just having a scratch or something. You know what, you're scrubbing your ass on that tree trunk. Absolute hooligans.
These rules were to be implemented by the D to the N to the P to the A, the Dartmoor National Park Authority, who would uphold them via an elite troop of Dartmoor Rangers trained in karate, and able to dish out fines for misdemeanours. Everything went swimmingly, more or less, until 2011, when the Darwalls bought the Blatchford estate near Cornwood. This is a big posh mansion with a lake and a deer park and pheasants shooting woods and all the stuff that millionaire banking Burkes dream of. And it also came with, about a mile from their pile, an area of land called Stall Moor, roughly 4 square miles of pretty barren moorland. Now, this is common land. Yes, the Darwalls technically own it, they literally own it, but they would have known upon purchase that this was land governed by the bylaws written in 1985 based on the ideals of the 1949 National Parks and Access to the Countryside Act. They could graze sheep or cattle there, but would have to put up with the proles enjoying it too. Except at some point in 2022, they decided they actually didn't like this arrangement very much after all. And for some reason, they seemed particularly peeved by wild campers using Stall Moor for a night under the stars. They got their lawyers to trawl through the bylaws and see if they could find any loopholes or ambiguities they could exploit, and hit upon this line: that people could enjoy Dartmoor for the purpose of open-air recreation. Could a slimy, lawyerly argument be made that camping wasn't strictly open-air recreation? They thought so, took it to court, and somehow won. This had a pretty massive knock-on effect. If wild camping was no longer legally considered open-air recreation on Stall Moor, then this meant that the bylaws didn't technically permit camping anywhere on Dartmoor. There was much wailing and gnashing of teeth. Wild campers, assorted hippie types, and the DNPA were all devastated. devastated and furious. Angry blogs were written, protests were held, podcasts that weren't podcasts were made. Weirdly, about a week after this decision, most landowners on Dartmoor shrugged and said, "You can still camp on our bit if you like." And incredibly weirdly, this included the Darwalls. Other than a few patches here and there, nothing had really changed. Or had it? Well, technically yes. Before the decision we had the right to camp on Dartmoor, and after it we had permission to camp there. Ideologically this wouldn't do. The hippies got their bongo drums back out, I made another podcast, and more importantly the DNPA decided to appeal against the court decision. A second case was held in 2023, and the DNPA, despite being strapped for cash and up against the Darwalls' team of expensive lawyers, only went and bloody won. And they did so with what can only be described as an act of pure legal logic. They dug into the bylaws, and underneath that slightly vague mention of open-air recreation, they found lines like, "No person shall use any vehicle, including a caravan or any structure other than a tent, for the purpose of camping," clearly implying that whoever wrote those bylaws intended camping to be covered by the phrase open-air recreation. And there was much rejoicing. For a bit, because the Darwalls then decided to appeal the appeal, and taking it to the Supreme Court is the final appeal. Everyone was on tenterhooks for a good long while. After all, the case had already been decided one way and then the other, and the Darwalls, like a lot of people with a lot of money, have a habit of getting their way. My mind certainly was filled with images of the Darwalls taking judges grouse shooting or plying them with expensive sherry and slapping them on the back. "Oh, did you know my father went to Eton with your father?" But my fears were unfounded, and after an agonising wait, last month the final verdict was given in favour of the DNPA and the wild campers, and we all lived happily ever after. And with my right to camp on Stall Moor confirmed, I'm heading out to enjoy that which I'm entitled to. A gloat camp, if you like. Now, I am, of course, overjoyed with Diana Ross and the Supreme Court's final decision. I'm also really late with this video, and every other YouTuber and their dog has already covered the story, so what can I add that hasn't been said? Well, I thought I'd talk about what's changed since this whole palaver began. It's easy to think that things have just gone back to the way things were before, but the Darwalls' actions have caused ripples. When a butterfly flaps its wings in Morton Hampstead, it rains in Princetown. But then that's a bad example, because it always rains in Princetown. Let's start with a subtle thing. The DNPA seems to be trying to rebrand wild camping as backpack camping. I'm always interested in these little linguistic twists and what motivations lie behind them. Backpack camping is a bit clunkier to say than wild camping, but other than that I'm a supporter. For starters, I've always disliked the term wild camping. It makes it sound like we're trying to be all edgy and dangerous, out here drinking our own piss, eating raw rook and fashioning a doublet out of moss. And backpack camping is quite a clever way of separating us from those who would rock up in a people carrier full of barbecues, cold boxes and inflatables, then camp 50 yards from the road. I think this is a really clever move by the D to the N to the P to the A. A lot of the vilification of wild campers seems to have come due to conflation with the less responsible fly campers, and where wild camping could apply to anyone in the wild, backpack camping implies right from the first mention of the name that you need to be able to fit all your kit in one bag and slog it over at least one hill. Right, what else has changed? Well, the Darwalls are out of pocket by, presumably, hundreds of thousands of pounds. This case must have cost them an absolute fortune. And this is what is really, really bothering me. There's a central mystery to all of this that hasn't been solved. What on earth were the Darwalls thinking? Seriously, it keeps me up at night sometimes trying to fathom their motivations. To start, it wasn't as if people were wild camping in the Darwalls' back garden, except for one YouTuber who pretty much did literally that, and even then only in response to them trying to ban camping. The law already prevented anyone from camping in their pheasant woods or deer park or farmland, and if they found anyone doing so, they were free to deal with them as they would with trespassers anywhere. No, this only applied to Stall Moor. It's a good distance from their manor, and despite going there quite a bit, I've never seen the Darwalls here. I'd actually be quite surprised if they ever come here. I'm actually quite surprised if I see anyone here. It's not got particularly beautiful views by Dartmoor standards, and it's really hard to get to. I see very few walkers up here, let alone backpack campers. This episode was filmed on the first day of the first weekend after the court verdict, when you'd expect to see plenty of backpack campers up here rubbing it in the toffs' noses. But there is no one here. It hardly seems like a problem to throw a six-figure sum at. And why pick on wild campers specifically? Backpack campers are, pretty much by definition, quiet, introverted nature lovers.
Cuckoo.
The Darwalls themselves cited concern about damage to the moor and its wildlife as their reason. And this is the most astonishing lie I've ever heard. If they were concerned about the flora and fauna of the area, then surely the fox hunters who frequent Stall Moor would be a better target. Or maybe their own pheasants, who are decimating populations of the rare blue ground beetle. Or the droves of cattle which are wearing away the ground around Stalled Stone Row. The absolute cheek of these people pretending they care about the environment. And furthermore, if they were worried about damage to the land or nature from backpack campers, then surely all that money could have been much better spent by donating it to the DNPA to train more kung fu rangers. It seems that the Darwalls somehow demonised backpack campers in their minds, imagined hordes of them on Stall Moor, and didn't think that the rules enforced there by the DNPA were sufficient to keep these marauding droves in line. They seem to have believed this nonsense so firmly that they were willing to throw hundreds of thousands of pounds at lawyers to do their best with a weak argument in court 3 times. I've encountered a few conspiracy theories, that they wanted to use the land for hunting, that they were planning to develop it under the new Freeport rules, or that they were going to mine it for lithium. But imaginary backpack campers would be the least of their obstacles to completing any of these diabolical schemes anyway. It's mind-bogglingly strange. My best guess, after a lot of thought, is that it's simply an ideological thing. They are rich and like to get their way. Backpack campers were somehow perceived as taking advantage of them by using their land for free. If you have any idea what they threw all that money away for, do let me know in the comments. Okay, the final thing that seems to have changed as a result of all of this is people's awareness of our rights and a growing appetite for more. Why, in England, is it only Dartmoor which allows this wonderful type of open-air recreation? Why can't we have greater access rights like they have in Scotland? Why do rich landowners think they can push the rest of us around? The Darwalls got it spectacularly wrong. Not only did they fail in making it illegal to camp on the moor, but they actually increased the public's interest in these matters. Perhaps their arrogant challenge will be the snowball that becomes an avalanche and leads to a proper right to roam in England. On my return journey, I hiked as close as I could be bothered to the Darwalls estate to look down on Blatchford Manor and give them the dignified nod of a victor to a vanquished opponent.
So it's bloody wild campers again.
It's backpack campers, darling.
I think it's that awful man from the Dartmoor Podcast.
It's not a podcast, darling.
Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.